Thank you. It works, right? Okay, good. We are now in a third panel of today. And before we go to the discussion about how the Pact of the Future will really impact our future. As someone said last night, you're having a panel on the Pact of the Future, and you would be talking about implementation of the Pact of the Future. And are you sure that we are going to have a future at all? We will not talk about that pessimistic perspective. We will talk how to be optimist based on rational thinking and showing that we really do have a plan how to go from the Pact of the Future to implementation of it. Behind us is COP29, where we showed that it is possible to take one piece of our future, like COP29 is about, and then show that, basically speaking, the COP29 can produce, and did produce, major breakthrough in some areas. Among the major one is about financing of the climate change. We'll have some panelists who will be talking about it as well. So I have honor and privilege to introduce person who we don't have to be introducing, President of North Macedonia. With all due respect, President of North Macedonia, she's a lady who is known as an academic person, coming from academic community. Madam Siljanovska is coming from, Gordana is coming from academic community, and became a president. People who are coming from academic community usually are people who actually stand for the values they stand for. If you are coming from another background, that without politics you have no life, or you have no fulfilling yourself, then you sell your soul to the political arena. When people from academic community or successful people in business, when they come, or successful people from art and culture, they come in politics, they usually do not sell the soul to the political arena. I know former president of Macedonia, my dear friend, President Ivanov, is the guy who shows and who showed that from Northern Macedonia, or Macedonia at that time, we are having presidents who are credible person, who really stand for the values that they go for with more or less success. Without further notice, we will have introductory remarks by Madam President, and then, as we already spoke, we'll go through 3 questions to get in depth of the things that were not covered in the first 5 minutes. Madam President.
Be sure that I am not a type of Faust. I used to say that I am still professor on temporary work in politics. Firstly, I thank our host of the Nizami Ganjavi International Center for the kind invitation to participate in the 12th Global Baku Forum. The Global Baku Forum is taking place in between the anniversaries of 2 important conferences. February marked the 80th anniversary of the Yalta Conference, which outlined the contours of the international order after World War II. April will mark the 80th anniversary of the San Francisco Conference, which formally established the order with the United Nations at its core. 80 years later, it is still difficult to imagine a world without the United Nations. But it is almost impossible to imagine the creation of the United Nations in 2025 according to the ambitious goals of 1945. Why is that? The World Organization was designed for an era that is long behind us, with lesser complexity and greater predictability in international relations. Since then, the world has undergone a major geopolitical, geoeconomic, scientific, technological, and industrial transformation. The number of member states and the world population has grown. Globalization has deepened and challenges have multiplied. However, the competencies, structures, and procedures of the United Nations have remained largely frozen in place at the time of its founding. Many opportunities for necessary reforms have been missed. The outdated multilateral instruments of the United Nations can no longer respond to today's geopolitical, economic, environmental, demographic, and technological challenges. Rarely have we needed the United Nations as much as we do today, and yet rarely has the United Nations been as politically marginalized as it is today. To correct some of the shortcomings, we gathered in New York last September at the Future Summit to adopt the Pact for the Future. The Pact, together with the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations, offered a vision of multilateralism that could more inclusively and fairly meet the three overreaching goals of the United Nations: peace and security, human rights, and sustainable development. But even before it was adopted, the pact faced the dual criticisms of too little and too much expectation. On the one hand, some idealists argued that the pact was not strong enough to be the elixir that would rejuvenate our 80-year-old organization. On the other hand, some realists saw the pact as just another desperate attempt to salvage the post-World War II order, the ruins of which lie all around us. Instead of multilateralism, there is multipolarization and growing geopolitical rivalry. International law has been eroded by double standards. New conflicts over resources, water, energy, and rare minerals are flaring up. The battle with nature seems to have been lost in advance. International relations have become unpredictable. Instead of Kant's eternal peace, which some of the authors of the United Nations Charter dreamed of, we seem to be in a pre-Hobbesian state. Notwithstanding the criticism, the pact was adopted as a carefully constructed global consensus over two things. First, although outdated, the United Nations is still the only organization that, in addition to universal legitimacy, has accrued experience, knowledge, and potential to address problems, mobilize the global public, coordinate policy-making and decision-making processes, and assist in their implementation. Second, substantial reforms are necessary that will make global institutions more legitimate, fairer, more effective, and more consistent in fulfilling the United Nations Charter. The Security Council should be expanded, reformed, and democratized to make it more accountable and responsible in maintaining international peace and security. The General Assembly should take its rightful place as a principal representative body, not only for debate, but also for policymaking. The judgments of the International Court of Justice must become binding on all. Only in this way will the United Nations be able to respond to the current geopolitical, economic, environmental, climate, technological, and demographic challenges. The Pact for the Future is a kind of global social contract, a new Rousseauian contract, which should strengthen the multilateral system with the United Nations and its core. But even during the first months, this global social contract has found itself facing a new challenge. The question that many are now asking is not whether the Pact for the Future will succeed, but whether it will even survive 2025. Will it survive in the new geopolitical circumstances, and if so, will it be a reference point for the renewal of the United Nations, or will it be reduced to yet another ambitious but overdue document gathering dust in the history archives? That depends on two things. First, will the states uphold their commitments? And second, will they abandon double standards? Why double standards? Because they are the Achilles heel of multilateralism. The selective, rather than universal, application of international rules and principles calls into question the universality of the principles themselves. With just one illustration, I will refer to my continent and my country. What the United Nations is to the world, the European Union is to Europe, a multilateral project with one ultimate goal, peace on the continent. It achieves this thought, the policy of enlargement with new member states that meet the Copenhagen criteria. As the embodiment of multilateralism, the European Union has an obligation to defend multilateralism impartially and consistently. But my country's European path is paved with the double standards, with emerging demands and new conditions that have not been imposed on other countries. Recently, at one of the panels at the Munich Security Conference, the Macedonian Prime Minister asked a rhetorical question. Why, when Russia denied Ukrainian identity and language, all of Europe stood up for Ukraine rightly, and when a member state of the European Union denied Macedonian identity and the Macedonian language, everyone was silent? The answer of the panel moderator was, because you are not under attack. So I think that we have to act always ex ante, not post festum, then it is late. To be honest, they are not silent, but rather demand that we accept the unfair conditions and negotiate for our national identity, language, culture, history, and even constitutional order. As a small country, we do not deviate from our strategic goal, membership in the European Union. After all, we are a natural part of Europe, geographically, historically, culturally. If we are an integral part of Europe, and if we perceive ourselves as Europeans, then European reunification cannot be completed without us. It is unfinished symphony without us. We are not abandoning our strategic partnership with the United States either, because despite the current turmoil, we believe in the importance of effective transatlantism based on international rules and principles. But we are also aware that always before physical borders are violated, principles and values are also violated. Double standards generate precedents that grow into rules. And when compromises are made with international rules and principles, and even with international law, the United Nations is compromised, the Charter is devalued, and the international order is undermined. So let's go back to the question, will the Pact for Future survive the year of 2025? This is not the first time we have been in this situation. The generation that founded the UN 8 years ago also struggled with the doubts and fears that their great multilateral experiment would suffer the fate of the League of Nations. And yet, they did not give up and established the organization. Likewise, we are torn between the longing for Kant's eternal peace and the real danger of Hobbes' war of every man against every man. And instead of becoming naive idealists or cruel Machiavellians, we should hold this global consensus with realistic hope. I say this is as the president of a country that has felt the burden of double standards, of broken agreements, on unfulfilled promises many, many times. The small states should be the loudest and biggest supporters of this pact. What will the future bring if we miss this opportunity? Would there be divided instead of United Nations, reduced to a relic of the past, blocked by the veto and paralyzed by numerous crises and challenges? Would there be a division of the world into zones of influence and interest, parallel orders that gravitated around different geopolitical centers, each with its own system of values, rules, and principles, each with its own yardstick for human rights and freedoms? Would we live in a world without universal values and without awareness and concern for global goods and the future of the unborn? That is indeed something we cannot afford. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, we heard Professor, and President, of course, but Professor Gordana Siljanovska Davkova with her introductory remarks. According to the script, I will pass it to questions to Madam President related to, let's say, something which is, we used to say that with Sustainable Development Goals were established that we have to act global and local, but we now, as a part of the future, it looks like we have to establish the new coin word. We have to act greener local, which is global, regional, national, in order to transfer it to the local. So how we can, as a region, do something, because there's obviously that pact of the future, as Secretary General said, turbocharger of Sustainable Development Goals, is corresponding with our European agenda, because we have European agenda, as reformist agenda of countries in the region. We have green agenda, European. We have digital transformation. How we can, and now we have a latest growth plan of the European Union given to us. So how we can actually, I'll say something about, ask you something about these geopolitical challenges that you said, are we going to go through 2025 before we go further? But before going to that issue, how we can do something more in a regional context to focus on not on the things that we don't agree on, but on the things that we do agree, like green transformation, like digital transformation, like education, how we can become members of one European economic community. So is there a hope that we turbocharge Pact of the Future in our region in the interest of all of us on national and local level, and of course to give some impetus on global challenges?
Thank you. Firstly, probably you know that now we belong to so-called Western Balkans. Sincerely, I do not know the meaning of this syntagma, Western Balkans. It appeared in 2001, and the explanation was that it covers former Yugoslav states without Slovenia plus Albania. Strange. Then when Croatia became member of EU, minus Croatia plus Kosovo, changing geography. Actually, we are speaking about geopolitical syntagma, and actually it meant then periphery of the European periphery. And that's why we are still waiting. I used to say sometimes in cynical way for Mr. Godot, something that is clear. What is clear? We've always been a part of Europe, geographically, historically, and culturally. Yes, they see us as European Achilles heel, but then Paris, as I remember the story, has not to kill Achille, but to protect Achille, to protect Western Balkans. How? Giving chance to Western Balkanians, I don't know what it means, to, because they perceive themselves as Europeans, to take their seat into Europe. Why? Because also those out from European Union, because European Union is not Europe, also those have to be given right to express their views for Europe, for future. Otherwise, those inside sometimes are acting like Euromandarins. And they are saying, just listen to us and do what we are telling you. Region, yes, we are aware that God wanted to be there together. So we are a kind of geographical family. And I used to say, colleagues of my presidents, please, we have to deal together. We have to become aware that we are abandoned and we share the regional interest. If we are not respecting ourselves as regional actors and factors, we could not expect to be recognized and confirmed by those within European Union. But it is not always so easy. And indeed, what I mostly expect is, I see here Mr. Pahor. I often say, because I'm Slovenian PhD bearer, I also say that if I treat Slovenia as my second dežela, it is a nice term for patria, for state, for home, then indeed I expect their help, because they have a certain experience. We've been for more than 50 years together in bad and in good, and indeed they, I think, that could understand us in easier way, and that we deserve their attention. But also, when I am saying that we have to understand and to help each other, I have in mind the need Homo Balkanicus to recognize in himself, in herself, Homo Politicus. Because during the history, we've been perceived through that terrible term of Balkanization, endless, how to say, separation, endless game. So I think that, yes, let me tell you that if you analyze us through the prism of harmonization with acquis communautaire, then we are on excellent way. Actually, I don't know, do you know that most of us in Balkans have even now the same international and defense politics with EU. So we are very similar. The only problem is to re-examine the problems deriving from so-called veto procedure, or problem related to bilateralization of processes. Namely, I have nothing to change tomorrow, the Constitution, entering the chapter for relation between national law and acquis communautaire. How? Why? Through prism of Copenhagen criteria. But sorry, we are tired to lose energy redrawing, re-explaining the history, who was when, who was first in, I don't know, 5th century, 10th century, or whenever. Then that is not right way, and I am criticizing that. And at the end, I always say that I'm not speaking about reintegration. I'm speaking about reunification of the Balkans, because we've been there. Actually, you know, all that small Europe is coming from that region. So, yes, we have the same future with Europe, indeed. We've been always Europeans. Europe is our home, and Europe has to accept us as members of the family, and enlargement at this moment is the most important for Europe. If Europe intends on multilateral stage to act like important actor and factor, she could do that gathering all members, all nations, all states in Europe. And only one sentence. Europe has also failed something. It appeared as a peace project. Konrad Adenauer, then Gasperi, Schuman were dreaming about family, about peaceful family. And now, in the Europe, we are facing war. The same problem, unfortunately, is with the United Nations. It also appeared as anti-colonial and peace project, and is facing war. And that's why I'm recalling, I'm repeating that the only place, right place, best place for solution of burning problems is New York and United Nations. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Well, I'll have a question as a reflection of what you just said, because you rightly mentioned that we as candidate countries have signed, agreed, that we will follow EU foreign and defense security policy. And this is part of our obligations. There are checks. Some bureaucrats in Bristol, they do check, check, check. Do we do it? But now in this, as you mentioned rightly in this introductory remarks, you know, this geopolitical turmoil is putting us in a very tough situation. So just as example, 15 days ago, there was a historical voting in the United Nations about Ukraine, resolution in Ukraine, where the European Union had a clear position, but United States came with a different position, different resolution. So us, who are coming from this Western Balkan, we spread a little bit, not a little bit, without going in details, but some countries from Western Balkan voted with European Union, some countries voted with Russia, some countries voted with United States. So the question is how we can, you know, get out of those, let's say, potential challenges, how we can survive this crash of titans, how we can go back to some kind of principled policy that we do have and that we do really follow, because after all, just as you said, we are Europe, but we are not in the European Union. And from time to time, we have to say to the European Union that in this next 5 years, they are challenged with dilemma. Are they going to Europeanize Balkan, or Balkan is going to Balkanize European Union? So we are actually doing their game and in their favor if we do harmonize with them, not them harmonize with ourselves. So how we can, in this turbulent time, how we can get out of this, how we can cooperate more, and with all due respect, to stay on our commitments that European Union is the union that has to find itself, that has to fight for itself, and fight for their values, and that we fight for those values with them together to show that we are in political and economic and technological, educational, cultural, and so on partner. Because we are, as you know, we are entering in time. Zoran Djindjic used to say, as the biggest reformer, that if you have a frog to swallow, just swallow the biggest frog in the beginning and then continue. But there's another approach. Maybe we can wait the frog to go away from our table and just don't eat green banana, let first yellow banana. By the time we eat those yellow bananas, the green ones will become yellow, so we can eat nicely. How we can do that?
you mentioned Professor Mr. Gingis, yes, but let me tell you that we are facing a severe crisis of leadership. Zoran Gingis was inspired by Habermas, fortunately. Yes, that's why I say that also Nizami Ganjavi is so inspirational, because at the same time he's a poet and also a philosopher. And we have learned, the students, that poetica and politica are very important. How? Europe, and also in other regions probably, but firstly Europe, has to be able to predict the possible events or to anticipate the possible events and to act ex ante on time, even not in time like Phileas Fogg, but never post festum. Let me tell you that what is happening, this bizarre, really bizarre attack and war in Ukraine, is lasting for 3 years. So Europe could act previously on time. And I think that, like in the Yugoslav bloody war, Europe was late, even now. There were chances, there were challenges, there were possibilities, because Ukraine is a part of Europe. Ukraine is asking also one day to become a member of EU. So the most interested in solution on time created is Europe. Europe was late, and then United States, like in Yugoslav case, are faster. And then there was a kind of confusion. And especially for small states. Why for small states like mine? Because imagine, in 21st century, we are repeating the credo of so-called real politics, that the powerful do what they can, and the weak what they have to. That is described by Thucydides in his Peloponnesian Wars, and this is Thucydides' world. But then my question is, but we have United Nations, we have also the courts in Strasbourg, the court in Luxembourg, the court in Hague, we have the Charter of United Nations, we have the criminal court. So, when I'm speaking about these institutions, I'm speaking not only about conflicts and not about power. Lord Acton is a clever person saying that absolute power absolutely corrupts, each power corrupts. So I'm speaking about law, about justice, about ethics, about morality. In the Greek language, there is a beautiful word, timos, to be recognized, to be seen in the right way. So I think that this is very important, to act on time, to include all possible sources. Let me remind you, even in Paris, not all members of EU were invited to be consulted. Then in London, again, not all those normally included in these processes were invited. This message for me is not good. That's why in General Assembly, because my country at the same time has United States as a strategic partner and also belongs to European Union. I have already said why. That's why supported or was neutral in voting, but also some of another countries were neutral. But then, interesting, we've been somehow accused that we are not consistent in our policy. No, that is not so. What's happened with my government? They preferred peace, because it was obvious that only in this way peace could be reached. But believe me, I expected peace solutions previously created by the European Union. So now there is a kind of confusion, but I have to repeat, like Benjamin Franklin, I say there is no bad peace and there is no good war. So the first thing we have to do, not only in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, also in Gaza, and also today, how many wars were mentioned? Sorry, I'm ashamed of that. In the 21st century, war politics is something strange, because I think that we have to think about that. Nobody is innocent. Somebody by doing, but also many of us only by viewing and by tolerating.
Madam President, thank you for this remarkable introductory speech and for your answers that were more than precise. Of course, I didn't ask you easy questions and you gave tough answers. So thank you so much. And I would call my friends, colleagues, panelists to join us on the stage. And Madam President, here's Hikmet. Yesterday when we were talking after our meeting with President Aliyev and your meeting with President Aliyev, we were all remembering the very same thing that we all shared with President Aliyev about Nizami Ganjavi. And it's a lot of us, forgive me if we're professors, but we did not...
the book about 5 beauties. I'm impressed.
See?
And I saw the order here.
See, so basically what I'm saying is that we all discovered when we were grown-up people about Nizami.
Yes.
We didn't know as much as we knew about Shakespeare. We knew about Nizami, but the point is that Nizami and this NGIC is made on 12th century wisdom, poetry, philosophy, dialogue, respect, learning, and understanding. Those 4 words, Madam President, are something that from 12 centuries from the hills of Ganja have to be transferred to all over the globe in 21st century as the principles that we should live on, and that's what Global Baku Forum is about.
Thank you. May I say only one sentence? This year, the laureate who won the Struga Poetry Award was Jean-Pierre Siméon, a French poet. And he said, the poets and the poetry will save the world. My comment was, the only poetry in this real world are we women. So we women could save the world, and I expect the General Secretary of the United Nations for the first time a woman.
Woman.